Have you ever brought your magic to Walt Disney World like, hey, we came to play? Did you tip your tiara to a Creole princess or get goofy officially? Step up like a boss and save the day? Or see what life's like under the tree of life? Did you? If you could. Would you? When we come through, it's true magic. 'Cause we came to play. Bring the magic at Walt Disney World Resort.
Is this house a good price compared to others in the area? Are prices going up or down? If I don't make an offer right this very moment, will I miss my chance? These are just some of the questions a home buyer might ask. And these are the sorts of questions an agent who is a Realtor can help answer. Because Realtors have the expertise, data, and access to specialty training to help you navigate the process of buying a home. They provide support, guidance, and have your back every step of the way. That's what Realtors do, because that's who we are. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
OG.
Make some noise!
My next guest is Hip Hop Culture. He founded Fat Beats in 1994, and I'm honored to speak to him. He's Joseph, a.k.a. DJ Jab, and I want to welcome him to Live with Tim Reinicke. Thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Cool. So I want to start with from the way beginning with Fat Beats, the store. There's a YouTube video out there that's labeled Fat Beats Grand Opening, AL, Freestyle, DJ Eclipse, Q Unique, Destroy, and Chino XL. One, is this YouTube video the actual opening of the store?
No, that's actually the relocation of the original store.
Oh, okay.
So
Good.
that was in 1996 when we moved into the new location, and by that time we were very popular, so that's how these video clips got created.
With the original store, the original location, with having artists on, with having DJs, how did the artists and how did those DJs and those performances kind of represent your mission going into Fat Beats?
Well, we started in 94, and it was just really to kind of combat, the lack of vinyl, hip-hop vinyl in New York City. It was really hard to buy hip-hop records in 92, 93. It was so house-dominated. So being, someone that came from the hip-hop and turntablist background, I was looking to start a business, or I was right out of college. So that's how kind of the store came about. It was just really, a lack of record stores at the time.
You eventually became one of the best vinyl distributors in the world, and you connected many indie artists to mom and pop record stores around the globe. Can you kind of talk about the impact you see that Fat Beats had, not just the store, but not just the stores, but also on distribution in general?
Well, just being a DJ myself and very into the music, just as much as I was into the business, I think really helped. And then hiring sort of like minds of people that understood the style of music that we were selling. I think we kind of became like a gateway for good music. It got to the point where it's like you wanted to have your records in the store and then eventually distributed because of the labels and artists we were working with. And we were basically just taking labels and artists that the industry was rejecting. Because in those days, in the early 90s, they wanted every record to be really big, over 300,000 sales, gold records, where there was a lot of artists that sold, slightly less than that were very good. They weren't getting picked up, so sort of the independent music movement started in the early 90s, and then we just happened to be right in the middle, smack in New York, when the music really started taking off. That's how people just kept coming, because the store was very curated towards, people who like good music. So I made sure that we represented a couple different genres. It wasn't just hip hop, but we also had the best of it. And I really wasn't taking chances, if you want to say. Like, I knew this stuff was going to sell.
You mentioned your staff, and I think the thing about the staff, and for not just the store, but for the label and distribution warehouse, many of them went from being behind the register to kind of putting out their own music and touring. And one staff member that I think was seemed very crucial in all this was DJ Eclipse. Can you talk about his importance for you in the store and how helpful he was for Fat Beats?
Yeah. It was in 1995 when I first opened up. The industry was pretty strong in New York City. There was a lot of representation from major labels and independent labels. They all had offices. So I used to go around to all the labels and promote the store and try to get the new releases and get some promos and just trying to create awareness. And Eclipse worked at Wild Pitch, and he just happened to be working with MC Search and OC. OC had just come out, so he came down to the store a couple of times promoting the OC project. Also, they had Large Professor and a couple of compilations they had, and it was really good. Business started picking up, and I recognized Eclipse, was kind of a connoisseur of music, especially the type we were selling. He was very educated, knew it inside out. He was a DJ, he even did some b-boying. So when the store started picking up, I needed someone on the weekends just to help out. So he seemed like a perfect fit, very reliable person. So asked him to start working on the weekends, and he did. And then when Wild Pitch folded, the company Fat Beats was doing really well at the time, so we were able to take him on full time. And that's how the relationship started. And he was a DJ. He came from the South and lived in New York, but his knowledge of the music was just, it was superior. Like, he just knew about everything when it came to hip hop, 12 inches, and going all the way back to the albums, everything.
So I was 94. I was 15 years old at the time. I grew up in Washington Heights. So going to Fat Beats, it was always for me, was just a great experience because you never knew who was going to be there, who was going to be battling. And at this time, we had, let's say, The Wiz, Nobody Beats The Wiz, and HMV, all these huge record labels. And I'm trying to get to the point where the point of this question is that DJ Evil D talks about how important Fat Beats was to his career, and he gives Fat Beats just credit for it. Can you kind of give the listener an understanding of, what was the record store scene like at this time, and then when did you realize the impact that Fat Beats was having on people's career?
Well, in the 90s, there was only a couple of major distributors that controlled everything, and Sony was one of them. And Sony also was a big manufacturer of equipment, CDs, turntables, and things like that. When I first started, I was going around to the industry saying I'm opening up a record store, and all the people in the labels were like, well, no one's going to be buying vinyl soon. So, and they were giving me all this vinyl, thinking that it's just going to be obsolete. As Sony cut out vinyl, like the vinyl first started getting cut out from major distributors, and it was to push CD players, CD sales, but also the players, CD players. So Sony made CD players at the same time they're cutting out all their vinyl and pushing CDs. And now CDs cost, a fraction to make a vinyl. And in those days, CDs were like, $18.99, $19.99. They were making like a killing in profit. So when we came around, we were like vinyl. So when people started seeing that, record stores, major stores are not carrying vinyl anymore, they still wanted it. They weren't accustomed to CDs yet. And if anyone was in New York in the mid 90s, there was a big retro movement. I mean, bell bottoms came back, the whole late 70s style came back into style, and people were buying vinyl. It wasn't just, DJs or people into hip hop. Just regular folks were like, vinyl's getting cut out, now I want it. Mm-hmm. So when I opened up, they were like, vinyl, so many people came. It wasn't just the hip hop community. Like, if you ever went in Fat Beats, you would see all kinds of different crowds, kind of like New York. You would take all of New York and all the different demographics. Every single type of person came down, to see what it was. And I think that we were, pushing something that the major labels were sort of gearing away from. Mm. And then, a divide started happening. You started seeing like, when Fat Beats opened up from 94, 96, hip hop was one music,
Right.
And then you started seeing sort of changing where like you had like very pop commercial sound of people rapping to, and they're saying, oh, this is hip hop. And then you had, the other side of it where you had like the hard producers and DJs and MCs just still, trying to create the best beats with the best loops and samples with the most complicated, intricate rhymes. So you had these two sort of music starting to develop in, 96 and then 97 moving forward. So now you look at hip hop now and go ask a kid what hip hop is. If you ask 10 kids, they give you all, all of them will give you 10 different answers.
Right.
But we were pushing that sort of, I want to say hip hop from the beginning, and that crowd, kept coming, and then, fans kept coming, and it just kept building. So you do have a couple of different, consumers now when you look at hip hop music, and we happen to have a good foundation of people that just like good music. Doesn't matter the artist or whatever. It's just good music that we sell to. That's why new artists work with us.
How do you make that decision? I mean, from a completely business perspective of it, like you just mentioned, there's different waves of hip hop that are coming through, right?
Yeah.
How do you decide? Like, how do you decide not? I guess maybe you don't, but not take that commercial record because it's because if you take the commercial record, you're going to get guaranteed sales, right? But how do you weigh that balance of like selling versus, I guess, I don't maybe authentic hip hop or not as much selling hip hop?
Yeah, I mean, authentic is a good name. We can't sell that stuff. You if you take the top 10 Billboard, rap records, we can't sell it. Like the stores that we distribute to won't buy it, and the customers that come to Fat Beats won't buy it either.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe a few. So it just doesn't work with us. So it became where it's sort of, I would call that like pop, pop music.
Right.
But we don't have success with that. Like when Eminem first came out, he had an EP that we picked up and we sold it, and we sold his records since. And then we sold Kanye West and stuff. But like a lot of this new stuff, we wouldn't be able to sell it. Mm-hmm. Just people won't just buy it from, because they know if they go to fatbeats.com or go to the store, they're expecting, people, the trees of like Pete Rock and DJ Premier and, like you mentioned, Evil D, the Beat Miners, Black Moon and Redman, people that come from those stems. That's the kind of style of music they're expecting for us to sell and distribute. So all this kind of new stuff that's very electronic and slow and not very lyrical, the kids that shop at Fat Beats won't, we would sort of hurt ourselves if we carried that.
We're talking about releases, and obviously you just mentioned a bunch of releases that you guys have had during your time in New York with the New York Fat Beats. Can you are there any kind of releases that you think have had the most, or have had such a great impact in hip hop, or have just stood out to you in terms of like maybe just slept on releases, but for you are just incredible releases?
No, we had like Missing Links. We did a 12-inch with Missing Links. That took off and had a sample that Dr. Dre sampled with Snoop eventually, and it was interesting because the producers that used to produce for Dre and them used to shop at Fat Beats. So there was, certain songs that really took off. Digging in the Crates was a label that we worked with, that we still work with, but we worked with in the mid-90s. And, they put out Day One, which was a Posse song. It was like the first time they all rhymed together. That was a huge impact. And then the labels we worked with had like amazing records like Raucus. When Raucus came around, we were distributing records that featured Mos Def and Talib Kweli, but then they signed them, and Raucus put out Universal Magnetic, which was produced by Sean J. Period, and it was Mos Def single, and that thing just really, really took off, and it was, you could sort of see the difference. You were like, oh, here's the kind of music that Fat Beats sell, and here's the commercial stuff that's being played on the radio. And, you know, for every 10 people that just buy whatever's marketed to them, you have that one person that's like looking and listening for music, and that's the person that we cater to.
Did that ever help, or does that not help you? Or if you're selling Eminem before he was Eminem, right?
Yeah.
And now you have today's Eminem or commercial Eminem. Does that not help Fat Beats to be like, hey, we knew this guy was something before you knew he was something?
I guess it depends on, you know, where they go. Like, if anyone heard that first EP that Eminem did, none of those songs were on his album.
Right.
You know, it's just different. So, I mean, we did sell the album, and we still sell his album, and we still do carry commercial product. It's just not as much, and you know, it's hard basically to see what, you know, what the kids are going to buy. You know, they have to kind of request it. But it helps. I mean, especially when the artist mentioned, like, yeah, you know, when I started out, I went to Fat Beats, this and that. That really helps out because it puts us in touch with other artists and other people. Because you know, once they start getting signed by labels and distributors, and you know, they just sometimes they forget about the record store.
Right. And
especially this day and age, with everything so digital, we're like, you know, there's still a lot of people that buy physical music. You know,
you talked about Kanye West earlier, and there's a video of him in the new store, 1996, spitting at Fat Beats.
Yeah.
But when were you there for that, and what were your first impressions of him at that time? And did you kind of imagine that he would become the Kanye he is today, or as well known as he is today?
Yeah, at the time, I had no idea who he was. I knew that the people that were rhyming, he was rhyming near Al Tariq, Percy P. I forget who else was there. Breeze from the Juggernaut, like Lord Finesse. These were all lyricists.
Right.
So like anyone that was rhyming was like, you had to really be on point. So I didn't, you know, actually I didn't know he was, you know, he rhymed until Eclipse released that video, you know, years later, like long time later. And no, actually none of us knew. He was, I forgot who it was. I think Eclipse was just looking through the videos and just happened to say, oh snap, look at that, Kanye West. So yeah, we didn't know. And, you know, in those days, like Chino XL was a big freestyler. I remember him coming up. He came in a limousine and he came up there and just killed it.
Wow.
You know, LP from Company Flow. If you look at, you know, Talib Kweli and Jean Grey, like, so it was all these bubbling artists that were just known for lyrics and, you know, just being, putting out good music. So I had no idea who he was, and didn't pay any mind until afterwards. But but his music was great. I mean, we liked his, you know, first couple albums. We sold them and everything. And you know, hopefully, you know, the next Kanye comes through too with the new store opening up.
I want to ask you about the DJ in a second, but I first want to ask you. I remember both locations in New York walking up your stairs, and those stairs were steep. Did anyone ever fall?
Not. There's people that's, you know, slid down a little bit here and there and caught themselves. Not so. You know, most, you know, all sober people have been straight, but there's been some unsober people that's, you know, took a trip down the stairs.
So back to the DJ. Obviously, you know, Fat Beats, you're known to walk into the store and MCs would be battling. I remember seeing Murs battle and doing Secret Wars Part 1 live, which kind of blew me away because I only heard them, you know, through tape or, you know, MP3 at the time. But you also had DJs like DJ Neil Armstrong, Rob Swift, just name a few. And yourself, you're a DJ as well.
Yeah.
What do you think was the first kind of performance at the store by a DJ that kind of completely blew you away? But then also, what's the importance of the DJ to the culture for you?
Well, you know, the foundation of hip hop music was with the DJ.
Right.
You know, so when it started out, you had, you know, the DJs cutting up the breaks, you know, the breakers break in and the MCs, you know, getting the crowd going, and then they started rapping. So that was always, to me, like the foundation. And growing up, you know, in the Bronx and then moving to Connecticut, whenever you said, a jam or hip hop jam, wherever there was a DJ. So I always felt like, well, if you get rid of that, then what happens? And you can't get rid of it. It's like with rock music. You can't get rid of the guitar and the drums and the bass. Mm-hmm. They tried for a while in the 80s. Everything went synth, but it went right back to that. So I felt with hip hop, I was like, all these guys can play with their CDs and their digital stuff and try to get rid of the turntable. But if they do that, first of all, they can't do that because that's the foundation of this culture, and the culture is too strong to go away. So I always had confidence in vinyl and DJs, and we never stopped selling vinyl from '94 until now. Even when the scene crashed and all the stores closed down, we always sold vinyl. Like when Fat Beats retail closed, we just distributed more. We went from, retail, people shopping at retail to people shopping all around the world and us selling distributing more product around the world. The stores were in major cities where expenses were too high. In like New York City, for instance, unless you're selling like diamonds or robbing everyone with huge profits, you can't afford to pay the rent and taxes. It just the rent per square foot doesn't make sense to small mom and pops. So that's why the Fat Beat stores, that's one of the reasons why they closed, because the overhead was just way too high. But to me, the DJ and the vinyl is the foundation, sort of the whole culture, and it started that way, and I think it'll always be around. And it shows now. I mean, vinyl has gone back up, and DJs are, somewhat relevant again.
When you talk about DJing, if you talk about the timing of your store, but also the timing of Battle Break Records, they seem to coincide, and I think you guys were on the forefront of kind of purchasing those.
Yeah.
How can you talk about how kind of these kind of records impact turntablism, and kind of, I guess, made DJing or turntablism kind of brought it to a new level?
Yeah, well, I mean, they were great tools for DJs because now you don't have to flip through all these different records. So they, the DJs like Lock Raider, Rest in Peace, and the Scratch Pickles, just took their favorite break records that they would always cut up, which were very common for most DJs, to cut up, because that's the one thing DJs had in common was you would find breaks to cut to, like Peter Piper, for instance, from Run DMC. Mm-hmm. That was just a common record that people cut up to. That was all around the world, just like Rock the Bell from LL Cool J, and and various other ones. But when the battle records started coming around, when the DJs started making the battle tools, it just made it more interesting because they were adding hits and sounds and stuff that you would try to incorporate into your routine, but it's hard, especially when you're in a competition because you're usually timed. Mm-hmm. Right. So those things were great because now, as a DJ that wants to practice, you can put on 2 battle records and just practice that the whole time because there were so many different records and sounds and hits. So you can. It's like advanced training. So I thought it was a great thing. The market got oversaturated, but that's the American way. So.
Unfortunately, your Fat Beats the store had to close. What were for those who don't know, what were the main factors that kind of caused the store to close?
It was just a combination. I would say just management and advancement. We I was going through a lot of personal changes, so I didn't really want to put any time into the retail stores, and the staff and stuff were kind of burned out already, and I didn't advance the stores as time advanced. And like I said, it was just, I was in New York and LA, Amsterdam. It was just hard, keeping the overhead because it's just, they're very expensive cities and vinyl profits aren't like clothing, very, very small. And I also noticed, the distribution company and the website, which was doing a lot better, taking off. So closing the stores gave me more time to focus on what's making more money for the company. Right now we're reopening in downtown LA on September 22nd. Mm-hmm. But that store has been open. We've been working out of there for the last 9 months, working the website. So if we did that back in the day where the store also was the website, it probably wouldn't have closed. It probably would have stayed open. But we sort of needed to go through this transition just to let the scene kind of let all the dust blow over and see who's left over. And, right now, opening the store, I think it's a great thing. Like I said, we never stopped distributing it. We still sold to a ton of stores all around the world, even after the Fat Beat stores closed. So you're still able to get the product.
Before we talk about the LA store, what do you think, or where do you think independent hip hop in New York would be if Fat Beats never came along? The store.
I think someone else would. There would have been another store or some. There was too many people that were into just hip hop for it to kind of go away. They had to go somewhere. So when I opened up, it was a gathering place, and not just New York. Worldwide, people would be able to come and gather somewhere, in a safe environment. I think someone else. I think there would have been another place because there was just too many people. Maybe they would have been hanging out at a park or something. Like I used to hang at Astor Place, or Tompkins Square Park, or the park on West Fourth, on the west side. But they would have gathered somewhere and sort of kept the scene going.
Do you know of any? I've always kind of envisioned Fat Beat's store as like the equivalent of when people actually or artists actually went to studios and went to the same studios. And you hear stories about two different groups are recording at the same time, and they run into each other in the hallway, and they create something comes out of that, right? And then I kind of equate that to how Fat Beats is. Off the top, do you know of any, or do you remember any kind of collaborations that might have never happened if they didn't meet at Fat Beats?
I know it was a meeting ground, and I know a lot of labels that were interested in artists would meet them there. I don't know what wouldn't have happened if they didn't meet, but it definitely was a place to go and to hook up with because it was well known. So when like Asphodel, when they wanted to sign the Scratch Pickles were in town. They met them at Fat Beats. And they're like, let's talk here, whatever. From there, go somewhere else. But yeah, you'd have to ask, I guess, artists and labels, who, because you don't know. You just see a bunch of people start talking to each other and kicking it. You don't know if they're doing business or talking about records.
Like you mentioned, you're about to open a new store in LA. Overall, what's the? I feel like it seems like in this day and age that is a big risk to take because you don't know if people are just going to continue to buy online or just download Stream or MP3s. But what's the importance of the record store? Not just the hip hop culture, but to the culture of music.
Because like with digital downloads, you're just sort of downloading the right to listen to something. So I think the record store for all music genres is important that people actually own, music. Mm-hmm. So when you buy a record from Fat Beats, you own that artist's music. You bought it, you own it on the vinyl version, and it's yours. Whereas, a digital download, if you ever read, there's a clause on that. You have the rights to listen to it through your devices and stuff. So, yeah, I just think it's, artists having people, own their product. So,
you mentioned the new store opening September 22nd.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about it, but can you discuss further about like what's the grand opening? I guess the grand opening, what it will be like? Will it be kind of the same scene that the New York Fat Beats had with artists, artists to collaborate? Will there be any artists joining you for that opening or DJs?
Yeah, there's a list of DJs performing. You can see that on the website and on social media. I anticipate a couple of artists probably wanting to get on and spit a freestyle. The store is going to look different than the original Fat Beats. It's going to look like a 2018 record store. Still full of vinyl, full of product, but it's just going to have a different look. And this is really one of my staff members. It was kind of his dream to run a Fat Beat store. So he really wanted to do it, and he was capable. So that's sort of how the store came back around. But I think it's going to be a good day. We do know the climate of vinyl sales, so we're not anticipating it's going to be like when the original stores were open, when we sold ridiculous amounts of records. But I think we're going to have some good stuff. And being that we distribute a lot of product, we get a lot of exclusive records. We're doing a lot of reissues with major labels and stuff. So with the store, you'll be able to get a lot of stuff first before it goes out to the world. So that's one of the advantages going.
DJ Jab, he's the founder of Fat Beats. New store is opening in LA, September 22nd. DJ Jab, thank you so much for joining me today in the library of Tim Heinekel.
All right, thanks for having me.
It's one thing falling in love with a house, picturing yourself moving in and calling it home, and quite another navigating the world of price negotiating, mortgage lenders, and finding the budget that works best for you. An agent who's a Realtor can make understanding that world easier. Realtors have the expertise, access to proprietary data, and tools to help you get from imagining living somewhere to actually doing it. That's the kind of help we can provide. Because that's who we are. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
Walmart Plus members save on meeting up with friends. Save on having them over for dinner with free delivery with no hidden fees or markups. That's groceries, plus napkins, plus that vegetable chopper to make things a bit easier. Plus, members save on gas to go meet them in their neck of the woods. Plus, when you're ready for the ultimate sign of friendship, start a show together with your included Paramount Plus subscription. Walmart Plus members save on this plus so much more. Start a 30-day free trial at walmartplus.com. Paramount Plus Essential Plan only. Separate registration required. See Walmart Plus terms and conditions.